It's going to be a while before we get to the... Okay, we'll go ahead and start.
So we will call tonight's Utility Services Board meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to actually amend the agenda with the addition of item 9B, which is a request for approval of new purchasing thresholds, will be presented by Chris Wheeler. Do I have a motion to approve this amendment?
So moved.
Do I have? All right, all in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The amended agenda is approved. So, approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any additions to that? Or questions, comments? Okay, then hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Next is the invoices. We have for $900,124.02. Were there any questions or comments on the invoices? Yes, Mr. Amon.
Question on the Highland on page 3. Are those all insurance-related charges?
Yes, they are.
And then the one that is the very first one for the biggest amount, what kind of insurance is that for? I didn't understand that from the description.
I will pull it, and it'll have more detail on the actual claim, so I'll pull that for you.
And does the city use the same insurance provider?
Yes.
Yes.
And is the cyber liability insurance new, or have we had that?
I believe, I'm not sure. I think it's new, but I'll have to double check.
These are just general interest questions.
Okay.
Not,
And we have them all, they're all here, so I can pull them, they'll have more information in them.
the next one
Uh-huh.
is on page 5, Michael Stewart Cagle for an easement on South Lincoln. Is this affiliated with the preparations for the Jordan River
Yes.
culvert? Okay. Finally, the state of Indiana annual service connection fee. Has that changed through time?
I don't believe so.
The amount?
Correct. I don't believe it has.
And our monthly charges are around 15,000 a month still, is that correct?
Yeah.
I think that's right.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Amanda.
I had a question from page 2 on the Frost Brown Todd LLC on the wastewater bond refinancing. Is that an annual thing that's happening? I don't recall seeing this before.
That was from the wastewater bond refinancing we did last fall.
Okay, okay,
We got a late invoice that we're paying.
okay. And then my second question is on page 5. Did we purchase a golf cart, and for where? It just wasn't specific which location was using that.
I think it's at the Monroe plant.
Yes, we did purchase a golf cart.
Or maybe it's,
I'm not seeing. Which,
well, it's split across water O&M and wastewater
It
O&M.
may be for the service center. I
I
think
think-
we've got one for here too.
Yeah.
No.
I think
I was
it's-
just
It carries
curious
tools and
which,
stuff around.
I was just curious which location that was for, because it's usually, something's,
Which one is it?
it's the,
Brandon, is that here? Yeah,
that's for here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Those were my only questions.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, hearing no other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve these invoices.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries and the invoices are approved. Next up are the utility bills in the amount of $104,446.23. Are there any questions about the utility bills? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, utility bills are approved. Next are the wire transfers, fees, and payroll in the amount of $473,110.20. Any questions about wire transfers? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, wire transfers are approved. And we have customer refunds in the amount of $1,574.12. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve these customer refunds?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, customer refunds are approved. And then finally, we have a invoice for a special check run of $562,750 for payment number 1 for AMI project due 2/15/20. Are there any questions? All right. Then is there a motion to approve this special check run?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, special check run is approved. Very good. All right, next up is the consent agenda.
Good evening, everyone. Before you is the consent agenda for tonight. These items are all recommended for approval by staff. I'll just go down the list. The first is $15,000 per year to Mitchell and Stark for on-call contracting. Software support for the FlowCam analyzer at the Monroe plant to Fluid Imaging Technology, $7,500. Mitchell and Stark, $7,325 for emergency repair of the raw sewage header pipe at the Dillman plant. Indiana Railroad property, $22,000 for installing a gravity sewer line under the railroad. Crane 1 for $15,000 a year, that's on call. Overhead door for $3,200 to purchase and install an insulated front and back door. Electric Plus, $4,900 to install 2 runs of 3/4-inch conduit and pull wire. DEQ Inc. for $3,600 for wiring at a motor starter. A reimbursement by INDOT from GRW engineers of $1,506. $20,000 a year to Cummins for on-call generator repairs. $8,000 per year to Wessler Engineering for on-call services agreement. And Building Associates, $2,715 for parts and service for the drain boots. Does any of the board members wish to consider any of these items separately? Hearing none, if there's no opposition, the consent agenda will be approved as consistent with staff recommendations. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
I know that, since Jim's not here, Jim has asked on several occasions if we could potentially just get the grand total put at the top. And-
I'm sorry, I forgot to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just a reminder that he wanted to start seeing that, and I think that would be a nice addition.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next item is the request for approval of agreement with Reynolds Construction LLC for $2,167,326. Jane Fleet?
Yes, for the record, Jane Fleeg. Just following up on the resolution that was approved by the board on February 3rd, your last USB meeting, allowing us to move forward with contracting with Reynolds Construction to do the sanitary sewer relocations as part of I-69. The majority of this work is reimbursable. CBU is responsible for $182,460 of that $2,167,326. I would like to have your approval to go ahead and enter into the agreement with Reynolds and get started on this project.
Are there any questions for Jane? Okay. Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve this agreement with Reynolds Construction.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the request is approved. Thank you. All right. Next is request approval of agreement with Miller Pipeline Incorporated for $622,944. We have Phil Peden.
Good evening, Phil Peden, Engineering Group. We've already discussed this project some because we saw the bids and the bid tabulation, the award to bid last meeting. So I wanted to go ahead and show the 3 neighborhoods on some GIS maps that Latrina helped me get on her slideshow here, just so you had an idea where we were lining. This is the South Fritz Terrace section. You'll see where it says Kinzer Pike and the bypass there. Just north of that is Kroger, and then you'll see the yellow lines depicting the vitrified clay within that neighborhood that we plan on lining. The blue is a newer pipe that's been replaced previously. So that section west of Kinzer Pike, north of the bypass, is the first section there in South Fritz Terrace. Next one. This is the area in Hoosier Acres, east of the College Mall. The area in green is previously lined pipe that follows the creek channel. We felt like that was the low-hanging fruit. We still recognize there's quite a bit of infiltration and I in this sewer basin, so we went back in and we're going to line the sewer that's marked with yellow south of 3rd Street, which is about the middle of the map there, and then west of Smith and east of the College Mall. And then the next one, please. And then this is the Highland Village neighborhood west of Curry Pike, north of 3rd Street, marked in yellow. Similar in age to the Highland Village neighborhood to the south, the larger neighborhood that we lined several years ago. You can see it's all green. And so that's the 3rd section there. And then another component of the project is chemical grouting, and I felt like the board probably didn't know much about what that entailed. And so there's a video here that one of the chemical grout companies has put on their website that I wanted to show the board just so you knew how this looked. This is where we're planning on doing this in the Hoosier Acres neighborhood. And so like we showed there, the whole neighborhood's been lined. So we've already taken care of the joints of each pipe. But what you'll see in the video is once it gets lined, where the joints and the cracks are in the pipe, the water stops, but it really just migrates over and finds the lateral and then enters our sewer main again. And so the grouting, they'll bring a packer into the trunk line here, and then they'll send a bladder, is what they call it, up the lateral, and then infuse the lateral with grout to plug in those gaps. So if Latrina would hit play. There's no narration, so I can narrate as we go. If you, or Vic, do you want to get the lights?
Do you get to tell him what to do very often?
No,
Always.
never actually, but it worked that time. So there's a depiction of the sewer system, and then they're going to come in with the sewer liner first. Do they show the I&I here? Coming in the joint on the left and then the crack. Then they line it. Then it all migrates to the lateral. And they bring in the packer. Televise, inspect the lateral, and then line it up with the bladder. And then, at least in the video, all the I&I disappears. So that's a system, and there's just been some new technologies. You can line sewer laterals, but this is another method that's more economical, and we wanted to try it out just in a small area of town that we had previously lined. We knew the lining worked, but it's only fixed the cracks and the joints, and there's still quite a bit in I&I that will migrate to the lateral. So We wanted to give it a try. We have flow meters moved at every one of the locations for our lining projects, so we can have pre-data and post-data. So we're anxious to see really how that changes with the grouting in Hoosier Acres. So we can share those results once we have completed the lining projects. You want to give it 6 months or so at least after the lining before we publish those results. But we're happy to answer any questions. We've worked with Miller Pipeline before, and they've done a really nice job. So,
Any questions, Amanda?
Any estimation on when the projects will start, and how long are we talking downtime for some, I mean, especially some of those areas are highly traveled areas.
yeah. So with the lining, there's no intrusion to the streets or traffic or the use of their sewer. So they shouldn't be impacted. It's a 4-month project, or I think 120 days is what's in the contract, and we planned on having a kickoff meeting with next week with the
Awesome.
contractor. So.
Great.
And you said there's no disruption to traffic? Is there a truck that needs to be like blocking traffic some? or-
Yeah, there will be.
Yeah, but it's not tearing up
not
streets.
open ditch or cutting, road closures or anything like that. It's temporary. Usually takes about 4 hours to do one section, manhole to manhole.
Okay. Is there another question? Jeff?
So it shows the grout going into what looks like the soil matrix. Are there any issues with that in terms of the composition of the grout? And I mean, I know we don't have wells around here or anything,
Yeah,
but are there
yeah.
any other concerns about that in other communities?
I've not seen any. I know that we do have some stuff in our some specific details in the specifications as far as, it needs to be environmental friendly grout. They do specify different grout for whatever reason for the sewer lateral versus if you used it for the sewer main. And I don't know if that's why exactly, if it sets up sooner or quicker in one versus the other. We're not in a community with too many wells. And it's a small amount of grout so it's not going to disperse really far. I think it's set on the amount in the contract. There's a certain amount within the specs on how many gallons per lateral. That way the contractors had an estimate how much would be used before they reached another criteria or level in the bid process.
And the amount of time where that bladder goes up there and there's no worry about backing up? They don't have to say, stop your washer machine?
Actually, they will.
Oh, they will.
They'll give the property owner a 48-hour to 96-hour notice that, hey, we're going to be in your sewer lateral, and, please do not, run your laundry or something like that. It can hold a little bit, but some laterals can be short. That neighborhood, most of those homes are a good ways off the road in Hoosier Acres, so I feel like there's some detention time there where it could hold
So they do the
small
TV,
amounts.
the video part, and then they plan and let the people know?
Let the people
Go back
know a
and-
couple days ahead of time.
Sounds like a neat technology.
Yeah, we're excited to see how it performs.
That was actually my question, was about the customer, what the customers are going to have to do,
Okay.
so.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion for approval of this agreement with Miller Pipeline.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries and agreement is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, approval of first addendum to license for use of city property. Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you. First, I'd like to apologize to the board. I don't have any videos to share, so it's not nearly as exciting as what Phil presented, but I promise to step up my game, and the next time I have anything real estate related, there will be something at least for you to look at on the big screen that will help you to appreciate what it is we're talking about. This is an addendum to a license agreement that the City of Bloomington has with the City of Bloomington Utilities Department, more particularly the Utilities Service Board. The Winston Thomas property that we're all very intimately familiar with is owned by the City of Bloomington through its Utilities Service Board. And currently there is a section of the Winston Thomas property to the northeast up on Walnut Street that is leased to the City of Bloomington's police department and fire department for them to have training facilities, which they have there, and a shooting range and a fire tower, things like that. This addendum allows the City of Bloomington Police Department to increase its footprint on the Winston Thomas property, to engage a contractor and construct an evidence storage facility on the property. And that evidence storage facility would sit to the east of the existing training facilities and just a little bit northwest, I think northwest of where we have our water station. And that's what this addendum is proposing, is that we have this understanding between City of Bloomington proper and Utility Service Board to allow for that facility to be constructed on Winston Thomas property. I'm happy to try and answer any questions you have. Mike Carter's here as well to help the board if I cannot answer your questions.
Are there any questions from the board? Yes.
It's actually probably for Vic. And I'm happy that we're giving the police department a place to do all this. But you know, the civil city is really good about sending us bills when we owe money, you know, down to the fraction of an hour for how much for city council and for legal and everything else. And here, you know, we don't get any money, and I'm okay with that. But I started thinking about the agreement that we have, the pilot agreement, I think it is, right? Mm-hmm. That, you know, and we pay all those fees based upon our usage and our land and everything that's held by utilities. So what I'm trying to guard against here is a double dip, okay? And so the question is, when we get those charges, does the Winston Thomas site get backed out of that, or do we pay for that site as well?
So would they take the acreage that we lease to the police department, will they take that acreage out of the pilot?
Correct.
That's a great question.
I don't have an answer either.
So I don't know that, it may not be in there now, but it's something I think that we ought to look into, because if not, then, you know, we're paying everything on the front end, and then we're paying, again, by subsidizing the use of the site. Again, not, you know, I'm glad that we're using it for that, and it seems like actually a pretty fitting use for this particular site. And if that is not the case, and let's say that all the money works out, I guess the bigger question here is there a reason that utilities should continue to own the site?
Well, that's a question that we've been discussing, either to split the parcel into two pieces and deed it to the city by some mechanism, or to lease it. And for, you know, the efficacy of getting the lease done is what we were trying to do at this point, but that's certainly something to revisit. The pilot is included in the interdepartmental agreement, so we can certainly raise that issue when we begin work on the next interdepartmental, which is
Okay.
the other way to correct it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily expect that anyone would have the answer today, but just something to think about with this.
No, it's an important thing to think about. If we're leasing it to them to build something, we shouldn't be paying the property taxes. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so I would just follow up and put that in the form of a request that we ask them to exclude it for next year, and the possibility of correcting that overcharge for this year. If we could do that, please.
We'll
And then my other question on the original agreement, what do they have any rights of, do we have rights to tell them that they have to remove the structure in some event that we would need to dispose of the property or do something else with it?
Yes, it's a, I forget the term of the original lease. Without sitting here and trying to read through the documentation, there is an expiration for the lease, and the property still remains the utilities, for the utilities department to use if it finds that it needs to use the property for utility purposes. But I can't honestly ever imagine we would do that unless they ended up vacating those buildings at some point far into the future, long after we've stopped being here, you and I.
Yeah, it's the questions about incremental encroachment, and do we have protection against that? I
We
mean,
do,
they're building a
yes.
structure.
It's still our
Does that-
property, and it can be removed,
Okay.
that structure could be removed if we needed the property for utility purposes.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I like about doing leases versus deeding it outright. We don't ever really know what we want to use our properties for. Today, we may not be able to envision what it is that we would use the property for utility purposes, but we, just a few years ago, didn't think we'd put a water station right there, and then we did. So you can't really know in the future what it is you're going to use the property for.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve this first addendum to the license?
So moved.
A second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries and the addendum is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, request approval of the memorandum of understanding with IU for the chiller plant wastewater services calculation. Mr. Schrader.
Hi, Brad Schrader, Engineering Department. With chilling water systems, they consume we sell them a lot of water, but most of it is lost to evaporation, so it doesn't go down our sewer system. So we have a program in place where we basically refund them a certain percentage of how much water is assumed to go to evaporation. It's normally a standard number around 20%, but in some cases, if they meter that, they can meter it for a year, and if they show that actually less water still is going down the sewer system, then we'll adjust our rate to match that. So in this case, both the water and the wastewater were monitored for about a year, and it came out to be 14% of the water is actually going down the sewer that goes through the water meter to them. So then based on this, we then set up a new refund where we only charge them for 14% of the sewer of all the water that got consumed. So that's what this, I think it's 14%, minimum understanding is doing. So it's documenting the fact that this testing was done and this is the real sewer flow, and this is what they're going to be charged for sewer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Amanda.
Is this something that we evaluate every year, every couple of years, or?
I think once it's going, it's going. And then what we do is we look at the meter, and if consumption goes up a lot, then it kind of sets a flag, and we say, hey, you're consuming more, and then we go
Okay.
look at it at that point. But I don't think it's on a regular
It's not like
schedule.
on a regular schedule.
This memorandum only lasts for a period of 5 years. I don't know if that
Okay.
So that should
Okay.
work there, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion for approval of the MOU?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries and the memorandum of understanding is approved.
Thank you.
All right, item 9A, uncollectible accounts receivable, and Laura is going to speak with us.
Hi, good evening. Every year about this time, we request that the board allow the staff to expense uncollectible wastewater and water accounts that are at least 90 days overdue and have an outstanding balance of less than $40. So this year, we have 950 wastewater accounts in the amount of $12,223.38. And then we have 648 uncollectible water accounts with the amount of $10,279.73 that we would like to write off.
Okay, any questions for Laura? Amanda?
My only suggestion, maybe just for in the future, is if we could just, since we only do this once a year, could we just see over, like, say, the last 5 years, like, what it's been, just so that we can see if it's been, this is averaging higher or lower, without us having to dig through
Gotcha.
the past ones.
Of course, we could put a table
Yeah,
in.
yeah, just to put a table in
Yeah.
for historical purposes. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes for the uncollectible accounts receivable. 9B, request for approval of new purchasing thresholds. Mr. Wheeler again.
Thank you very much. Back in January of this year, I met with the city controller, Jeff Underwood, and Julie Martindale, who was the purchasing manager for the city of Bloomington's controller's office. And we discussed purchasing parameters that were set forth for the Utilities Department way back in 1996, and asking whether we might be allowed by the Controller's Office to move those thresholds up to better reflect what's going on by the state and its requirements in the year 2020. I was met with approval in that request, and I have to say that my discussion with the Controller's Office to do this was after quite a bit of request made by various staff members here at the Utilities Department. The staff very much wants these thresholds, as they should, provide a smoother procedure by which the various departments can go through the purchasing requirements to keep maintenance of all the buildings going smoothly and all the machinery in the buildings and just everything, basically, just to keep the operation running much more smoothly. Having said all of that, what we have before you is a one-page sheet that outlines what those purchasing procedures are. It greatly mirrors the 1996 one-sheet purchasing procedure document that's been used by CBU throughout all of these years. This particular set of purchasing procedures raises the parameters for signed approval to show that now signed approval by area supervisors can occur for every purchase that's going to take place of $5,000 or less. You need area supervisor and assistant director approval for all purchases between $5,001 up to $50,000. And then area supervisor, assistant director, and director approval for all purchases of $50,001 and greater. So that makes it a little easier to push through purchases based upon how many different authorizations you need at its outset. And then we sort of modified some of the purchasing parameters under step 3. Actually, for funding request approval, we're still at $10,000, but then at step 3, talking about request bids and quotes, purchases of $5,000 or less, we can just purchase on the open market. Purchases of $5,001 up to $50,000, we can follow 3 options that are listed there. The least intrusive of which is to request verbal quotes from at least 3 possible vendors, at least 3 possible contractors, service providers. Then you certainly may use written requests to follow requests for written quotes if you wish, or you can certainly also follow formal bidding procedures. Then for purchases between $50,001 up to $150,000, again, you can do only 2 things in this set of parameters, and that would be to do written requests as stated in here through email, or follow the formal bidding procedures that are required by statute. You cannot do verbal phone quotes like you can in the other sections. And then for all purchases over $150,000, we are required to follow formal bidding procedures. These mirror state statute. This mirrors what the controller is authorizing us to do now with regards to our purchasing. I believe that it's good for the City of Bloomington Utilities Department to have the parameters raised, and would encourage the board to approve these procedures as written.
Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Penn.
First of all, I completely support this, and we should have done this probably a long time ago. The only question I would have is this going to change anything? I mean, I know that we see everything as part of approving the claims, but will this change anything with the limits on our consent agenda?
No.
Okay.
Contracting doesn't really change much at all. Just because we've changed the thresholds for purchasing doesn't change the fact that in reality, whenever there is any service component to what's being purchased, there must be a contract that goes along with the purchase. So you will still be seeing all of those service contracts just as you have before. They'll fit onto the consent agenda if they're under the threshold for consent agenda, and otherwise you'll see them as individual items presented to the board.
And frankly, it seems like this is about as liberal as we can get with this, given the parameters of state statute, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve these new purchasing thresholds?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. The thresholds are approved.
Thank you.
All right, is there any old business from the board? Old business from staff? New business from the board? New business from staff? Okay, and we didn't have any subcommittee reports, is that correct? All right, staff reports.
I've got a few items for you. The first one is I'd like to welcome Nathan Herr. I think he's here. Yes. Nathan is working in our environmental programs group, and so actually in a position that was added in the 2020 budget that supports all the different environmental programs for CBU. So we welcome Nathan. The second one is just another update on the Griffey project. We are hopeful that the bid package will go out in the near future in the next couple of weeks. And the bid package for the Dillman modernization is on the street, so we'll be seeing that soon. The last item I had was to remind everyone the board retreat is set for March 9th. So we'll be following up with more details in the coming weeks. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Did we ever set the date, the alternate date for the USB meeting?
Yeah, it's, I'm actually going to send that out to you guys today, but it will be March 12th,
March 12th,
Uh-huh.
at the regular time?
1 p.m.
Oh, 1
At
p.m.
1 p.m. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, are there any petitions and communications from the public? Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
We are adjourned.
I was putting that in my calendar.